The day I collapsed, my husband told the doctor not to waste too much money trying to save me. At least, that's what I realized later. At the time, all I knew was that the world had suddenly become small, blurry, and terrifyingly quiet. One moment I was standing in our kitchen in San Diego, holding a cup of tea. The next moment the cup slipped from my fingers and shattered across the tile floor. My hands were shaking. Not the kind of shaking that comes from stress or too much coffee. This was different. My fingers wouldn't obey me. My chest felt tight. My stomach twisted as if someone had reached inside and squeezed my organs with both fists. "Ryan," I whispered. My husband was sitting at the dining table scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up. "What now, Emily?" The irritation in his voice felt sharper than the pain in my body. I don't feel right." I tried to take a step toward him, but my legs buckled. The room spun violently. The last thing I remember seeing was Ryan standing up slowly, like someone annoyed that a meeting had run longer than expected. Then everything went black. When I woke up again, bright white lights were burning above me. Machines beeped steadily around the bed. A thin plastic tube ran into my arm. For a moment, I didn't understand where I was. Then a woman in blue scrubs leaned over me. "You're awake," she said. "Try not to move."
My throat was dry.
"Where am I?" "You're at Harbor Crest Private Clinic," she replied. "San Diego." The words floated through my head slowly. Fragments of memory began returning. The kitchen.
The tea. Falling.
"Your husband brought you in," the nurse added. "You collapsed at home." I turned my head slightly. Ryan was standing near the window, speaking quietly on his phone. Even from the bed, I could see the tension in his shoulders. "No, the insurance didn't approve it yet," he was whispering. A pause. "Yes, they want a deposit." Another pause. "I know. I'm working on it." When he hung up, he forced a smile and walked toward the bed. "Hey," he said gently. "You scared me." "What happened to me?" I asked. He hesitated. Then the doctor entered the room. A tall man with tired eyes and a tablet in his hands. "Mrs. Parker," he said, "you're experiencing acute multi-organ stress. Your kidneys and liver are showing severe signs of failure." The words didn't make sense. Failure? But I was healthy, I whispered. Ryan squeezed my hand. "We're going to figure it out," he said. The doctor continued. "You'll need immediate treatment, possibly dialysis and extended monitoring." He glanced briefly toward Ryan. "However, before we proceed further, the administration needs confirmation of payment." Ryan cleared his throat. "I gave them our insurance." "Yes," the doctor said carefully. "But the insurance company has declined the initial authorization." Silence filled the room. My chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't physical pain. It was fear. Ryan pulled out his wallet and handed over a credit card. "Just run this for now." The nurse left with the card. I stared at the ceiling, trying to breathe slowly. Minutes passed. Then the nurse returned. Her expression had changed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. The card was declined. Ryan frowned. "That's impossible. Would you like to try another card?" He pulled out a second one. Another wait. Another quiet conversation outside the room. When the nurse came back, she didn't even meet my eyes. That one was declined as well. Ryan ran his hands through his hair. "This must be some mistake." The doctor's voice became colder. "Mr. Parker, this is a private clinic. Without financial authorization, we cannot continue advanced treatment." I felt the panic rising inside me. "Please," I whispered, "don't send me away." The doctor avoided my gaze. "We're not sending you away, Mrs. Parker. But if payment isn't secured, we'll have to move you out of the intensive room." Ryan stepped closer to the bed. "It's okay," he said quickly. "I'll go find the money. I'll call the bank." "You promise?" I asked. He nodded. "Of course. I'll fix this." He leaned down and kissed my forehead. Then he walked out of the room. I watched the door close behind him. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 2. Ryan never came back. Eventually the nurse returned with another staff member. Their voices were professional.
Polite.
But distant. Mrs. Parker, she said carefully, we need to move you into the hallway until payment arrangements are resolved. The machines around my bed began to beep louder as they unplugged the monitors. Cold fear spread through my chest. Please, I whispered weakly. My husband said he was coming back. The nurse looked uncomfortable. He hasn't returned any of our calls. They began rolling my bed toward the door. The hallway lights felt harsher than the room. People walked past without looking at me. Somewhere deep inside, a terrible realization started forming. Ryan wasn't coming back. My husband had left me here. Left me to die.
And I didn't yet understand why.
They left my bed beside a vending machine. That's the detail I remember most clearly. Not the pain in my body. Not the quiet panic spreading through my chest. It was the sound of soda cans dropping behind the glass every time someone bought a drink. Cold. Indifferent. Like the world had already moved on without me. The hallway lights were too bright. My eyes struggled to stay open. Without the machines from the private room, the silence around me felt heavier. A nurse adjusted the thin blanket over my legs. I'm sorry, she murmured. I could see the guilt in her face. But guilt didn't stop them from pushing my bed out of the room. Did my husband call? I asked weakly. She hesitated. Then she shook her head.
No.
Something inside my chest cracked a little. Ryan and I had been married for 6 years. 6 years of birthdays, dinners, quiet Sunday mornings. 6 years of believing we were a team. And now he had simply vanished. The nurse checked my pulse again. You really need treatment, she whispered. Your organs are shutting down. I know, I said. But knowing didn't change anything. Another nurse passed by, glancing briefly at the chart attached to the end of my bed. No payment yet, she asked quietly. The first nurse shook her head. They're calling the billing office again. They spoke like I wasn't there, like I was already fading out of existence. Minutes stretched into something shapeless. My vision blurred at the edges. Breathing became harder. I remember thinking one strange, distant thought. So this is how it ends. Not in a dramatic accident. Not in some tragic event. Just slowly disappearing in a hallway because my credit card didn't work. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Several sets. Heavy ones. Purposeful. At first I thought it was another doctor. But then voices followed. Deep. Authoritative. Clear the hallway. That voice was not hospital staff. The nurses turned immediately. 3 large men in dark suits entered the corridor first. Their presence changed the entire atmosphere of the floor. Security. Behind them walked an older man with silver hair and a perfectly tailored charcoal coat. He moved slowly, calmly, as if the hospital belonged to him. The nurses straightened. Good evening, Mr. Whitmore, one of them said nervously. The name meant nothing to me, but it clearly meant something to everyone else. Good evening, the man replied. His voice was deep, measured. He began walking down the hallway with the quiet confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Then his eyes landed on me. His step slowed. He stopped beside my bed. For several seconds he simply stared. Not in confusion. Not in curiosity. Something else. Recognition. His expression changed in a way I couldn't understand. Why is this patient in the hallway? He asked. The nurse shifted uncomfortably. There's a billing issue. What kind of billing issue? The insurance declined payment, sir. The man's gaze moved to the chart at the foot of my bed. His security team remained completely silent behind him. And because of that, he said slowly, She's lying next to a vending machine? No one answered. His jaw tightened. How long has she been here? About 2 hours. 2 hours. Hearing it out loud made the humiliation burn deeper. The man looked back at me. His eyes softened slightly. What's your name? He asked. My voice was barely audible. Emily. Parker. The moment I said my name, something strange happened. The man froze. Not dramatically. Just a subtle pause.
But I saw it.
His eyes sharpened instantly. Parker, he repeated. I nodded weakly. He looked at my face again. Longer this time. Then he turned to one of the security guards. Call billing. The guard pulled out a phone immediately. Yes, sir. The man kept his gaze on me. You're going back into a room, he said calmly. The nurse blinked in surprise. Sir, without payment authorization. I'm authorizing it. His tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. The entire hallway seemed to hold its breath. How much is the deposit? He asked. The nurse checked the chart. $200,000. Without hesitation, he replied. Pay it. The guard spoke quietly into the phone. Within seconds, the nurse's station began buzzing. Computers turned on. Phones rang. Staff members rushed around, suddenly energized. The nurse beside my bed looked stunned. Mr. Whitmore, that covers the entire treatment plan. Good, he said. Then he turned to the staff. I want the best specialists on this case. Yes, sir. Move her into the executive suite on the top floor. Another stunned silence. That room is reserved for whoever I decide. The nurse nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Within minutes, everything changed. Machines were reattached. Doctors appeared. My bed was rolled quickly down the hallway toward the elevators. The last thing I saw before the doors closed was the vending machine disappearing behind us. The silver-haired man stepped into the elevator beside my bed. Up close, his presence felt almost overwhelming. Powerful. Controlled. He looked down at me again. And this time his voice was softer. Emily Parker, he said quietly. You have no idea how long we've been looking for you. When the elevator doors opened, everything around me felt unreal. The top floor of the clinic didn't look like a hospital at all. Soft lighting replaced the harsh fluorescent glare from downstairs. The air smelled faintly of lavender instead of disinfectant. The floors were polished marble, and quiet music played somewhere in the distance. My bed was rolled into a room larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the San Diego harbor. A leather sofa sat near the wall. There was even a small dining table beside a private balcony. For a moment, I wondered if I had died. Doctors began moving quickly around the bed. Blood pressure dropping. Prepare dialysis. We need labs immediately. Hands adjusted 4 lines. New machines were connected. Someone placed an oxygen mask over my face. Through the blur of activity, I could still see the silver-haired man standing quietly near the window, watching me, watching carefully. After a while, the doctors stepped back. One of them turned toward him. Mr. Whitmore, we've stabilized her for now, but we still don't know what caused the organ damage. Do whatever is necessary, the man replied. No cost restrictions. Yes, sir. The medical team left the room one by one, their footsteps fading into the hallway. Soon the room became quiet again, just the soft hum of machines, and the steady rhythm of my breathing through the mask. The man walked slowly toward the bed and pulled a chair beside me. Up close, his presence felt less intimidating than before, more thoughtful. How are you feeling? He asked. Like I've been hit by a truck, I managed to whisper. A faint smile crossed his face. That's surprisingly accurate for organ failure. My eyes narrowed slightly. You talk about it like it's casual. I've spent most of my life around hospitals.
He paused,
Then added quietly, my family built several of them. Something about that sentence made my mind stir weakly. Whitmore. The name echoed somewhere in my memory. Before I could ask anything, the door opened again. A younger man entered the room carrying a thin black folder. He wore the same dark suit as the security team. Sir, he said to the older man. The silver-haired man nodded. Thank you, Daniel. Daniel handed him the folder. The older man opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, documents, medical records. His eyes moved across the pages carefully. Then he looked at me again. The same strange recognition from earlier returned. Emily, he said gently. Yes. Do you know anything about your birth parents? The question caught me off guard. My parents are dead, I said. Car accident when I was 12. I'm sorry, he replied, but I meant before them. I frowned. I was adopted. That much we know. My heart skipped.
We.
He closed the folder and rested it on his knee. My name is Charles Whitmore. The name hit me like a distant thunderclap. Whitmore Medical Group. One of the largest private healthcare networks in the country. Hospitals. Research centers. clinics across multiple states. I had seen the name on medical buildings my entire life. But the man sitting beside my bed was speaking as if my life somehow involved him. "I'm not sure I understand," I said weakly. Charles Whitmore leaned forward slightly. "Emily, 72 years ago, my father founded Whitmore Medical Group."
He paused.
Arthur Whitmore. Even through the fog in my head, the name sounded familiar. A legendary figure in American healthcare. Philanthropist. Billionaire. Founder of one of the largest medical empires in the country. Charles continued quietly. "My father had one son." "You?" I asked. "Yes. And that son had one daughter." I waited, but something inside me already felt uneasy. "That daughter," Charles said slowly, "gave birth to a baby girl 32 years ago in a hospital in Los Angeles." My pulse began to race. "What does that have to do with me?" Charles's eyes held mine steadily. "That baby disappeared from the maternity ward 2 days after she was born." The machines beside my bed beeped slightly faster. I stared at him. "What?" "The police called it a kidnapping." He opened the folder again and pulled out a photograph. A faded hospital picture. A newborn baby wrapped in a white blanket. A small pink bracelet around the tiny wrist. Her name was Emily. My breath caught. "That doesn't mean..." Charles gently turned the photo toward me. Next to it, he placed another image. A recent photograph. My face. Taken from a driver's license database. Side by side. Same eyes. Same nose. Same jawline. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. My chest tightened. "No," I whispered. Charles's voice was steady. "For 32 years, my family searched for that child." He placed another document on the bed. A DNA report. Official. Stamped. Verified. Then he said the sentence that shattered the world I thought I knew. "You weren't just adopted, Emily." His gaze softened. "You were stolen." I felt the room spinning again. The machines beeped louder. Charles continued quietly. "And that makes you the missing granddaughter of Arthur Whitmore, the founder of the Whitmore Empire, the billionaire who built half the hospitals in California, the man who had died 2 months ago, leaving behind a fortune worth billions. And suddenly, every reason someone might want me dead." I stared at the DNA report for a long time. The numbers and letters blurred together, but one sentence remained painfully clear. Probability of biological relation, 99.998%. My fingers trembled against the hospital blanket. This has to be wrong," I whispered. Charles Whitmore didn't interrupt me. He simply waited. "You're telling me my whole life is a lie?" I said. "That my parents, the people who raised me, weren't really my parents?" "They were your parents," Charles said gently. "Just not by blood." My chest tightened. "They loved you. That part of your life is real." I tried to process everything at once, but my mind kept returning to one impossible thought. If this was true, if I really was Arthur Whitmore's granddaughter, then why had no one told me before? Charles seemed to read the question on my face. "We only confirmed your identity recently," he said. "How recently?" He hesitated. 3 years ago." I blinked. 3 years. The machines beside my bed beeped softly as my heart rate climbed again. "You found me 3 years ago and didn't contact me?" Charles exhaled slowly. "We tried." My stomach twisted. "What does that mean?" He opened the black folder again and removed several documents. Old adoption records, medical forms, background reports, and one thin envelope. The return address printed in the corner made my chest go cold. "Ryan Parker." Charles slid the envelope onto the bed. "Your husband contacted us first." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. "My husband," I said. "Yes." The word echoed in my head. Ryan. The man who had just abandoned me in a hospital hallway. The man who had kissed my forehead and promised to come back. The man who never did. Charles continued quietly. 3 years ago, someone submitted a formal inquiry to the Whitmore Foundation archives. I swallowed hard. The inquiry included partial adoption records and a DNA sample.
My voice felt hollow.
Ryan sent that? Charles nodded. He claimed he was helping his wife learn about her biological family. That sounded exactly like Ryan. Helpful, supportive, caring. At least the version of Ryan I believed existed. What happened after that? I asked. Charles placed another document on the bed. A laboratory report. Another DNA test. This one older. Dated 3 years ago. The DNA confirmed the connection to our family line, Charles said. My heart pounded harder. So, why didn't anyone tell me? Charles's expression darkened slightly. Because your husband asked us not to. The words hung in the air like poison. What? He told us you were emotionally fragile, Charles said calmly. That discovering the truth too quickly could cause psychological harm. I felt my fingers curl into the blanket. He asked us to give him time to prepare you.
Prepare me.
The phrase suddenly sounded sickening. How much time? I whispered. Charles looked directly into my eyes. He said your grandfather was very old. Arthur Whitmore had been 92. He believed it would be easier for you if you learned the truth after your grandfather passed away. My breathing became uneven. You're saying Ryan knew? Charles nodded slowly. For 3 years. The room felt colder. Memories rushed through my mind. Ryan encouraging me to keep a simple life. Ryan insisting we didn't need financial risks. Ryan telling me not to chase complicated family history. Ryan carefully controlling every major decision in our marriage. And suddenly, the pieces began sliding together. He knew I was the heir, I whispered. Yes. And he never told me. Charles remained silent. My chest burned. Then another realization struck me. If my grandfather died 2 months ago. Charles finished the thought quietly. The Whitmore estate began transferring ownership shortly afterward. My pulse thundered in my ears. The Whitmore empire. Hospitals. Medical research companies. Real estate. Investments. Billions of dollars in assets. And Ryan knew that too, I said. Yes. I closed my eyes. The memory of him standing beside my hospital bed flashed through my mind. Don't worry. I'll find the money. He never planned to come back. He had already been waiting 3 years. Waiting for Arthur Whitmore to die. Waiting for the inheritance to become real. Waiting for the moment when my death would make him the legal beneficiary. And suddenly the question that haunted my mind became impossible to ignore. If Ryan knew I was worth billions, then why would he abandon me in a hospital? Unless... My eyes opened slowly. What if my death wasn't an accident? I whispered. Charles Whitmore didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a small tablet. Before we answer that, he said quietly, there's something else you need to see. He pressed play. The screen filled with grainy black and white footage. Security camera video from the clinic parking lot. A familiar figure appeared on the screen. Ryan, walking calmly out of the building. Not alone. A blonde woman stepped into frame beside him. They stopped next to his car. And then something happened that made my blood run cold. Ryan wrapped his arm around her waist. And they both started laughing. The video kept playing. For a moment I forgot to breathe. Ryan stood beside his car in the clinic parking lot, the bright California sun reflecting off the windshield. He looked relaxed.
Calm.
Not like a man whose wife was upstairs fighting for her life. The blonde woman next to him laughed at something he said. Her hand rested comfortably on his chest. Intimate. Familiar. Charles paused the video and zoomed slightly. Her name is Chloe Bennett, he said quietly. She works with Ryan at his construction firm. I stared at the screen. I had seen her before. At company parties. Office barbecues. Ryan always introduced her the same way. This is Chloe from accounting. Friendly. Harmless. Just another coworker. But the woman in the video wasn't standing like a coworker. She was leaning into him. Her fingers sliding slowly along the front of his shirt. Keep playing, I whispered. Charles nodded. The footage resumed. Ryan opened the car door for her like a perfect gentleman. She climbed into the passenger seat. But before closing the door, she grabbed his arm and pulled him closer. Their faces met.
They kissed.
Not quickly. Not nervously.
Comfortably.
Like two people who had done it many times before. My stomach twisted. The car door closed. Ryan walked around to the driver's side. Before getting in, he leaned against the roof and pulled out his phone. The audio was faint, but Charles increased the volume. "Yeah," Ryan said casually. "They're not treating her." Chloe's voice came from inside the car. "So that's it." "Pretty much."
A pause.
Then she laughed. "What if she survives?" Ryan shrugged. "You saw the doctor. Her organs are shutting down." My chest tightened painfully. Inside the car, Chloe spoke again. "And the insurance?" Ryan smirked. "That's the best part." He tapped the side of his phone. "I canceled the extended coverage last month." My fingers curled into fists. "You canceled it?" Chloe asked. "Of course." Ryan's tone was relaxed, almost amused. "If the hospital tries to treat her too long, the bills get ridiculous." Another pause. "But if she dies soon," Chloe finished the sentence, "the life insurance pays out." Ryan nodded slowly. $2 million. The number echoed in my ears. 2 million. My life reduced to a financial calculation. Chloe leaned closer to him again. "And then?" she asked. Ryan opened the car door and slid into the driver's seat. The security camera captured their faces through the windshield. He looked happier than I had seen him in years. "Then," Ryan said, starting the engine, "everything changes." Chloe smiled. "What about the Whitmore money?" My heart skipped. Even Charles seemed to stiffen slightly beside me. Ryan glanced around the empty parking lot before answering. "They still haven't contacted her," he said. "But they will eventually." Chloe tilted her head. "And when they do?" Ryan's smile widened. "Well, by that time she'll already be dead." My breathing became shallow. Inside the car, Chloe laughed again. "That's insane," she said. Ryan shrugged. "Timing is everything." The car began rolling toward the parking lot exit. Chloe reached over and squeezed his arm. "So we celebrate tonight?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "Oh yeah." He looked back once toward the clinic building, toward the floor where I had been lying in the hallway. Then he said something that made my entire body go cold. "To Emily Parker." Chloe raised an imaginary glass. "To Emily." Ryan smirked. "And to the luckiest accident of my life." The video ended. Silence filled the hospital room. The machines beside my bed beeped softly. I stared at the dark screen. My husband hadn't just abandoned me. He had expected me to die. Planned it. Celebrated it. After a long moment, Charles Whitmore spoke.
His voice was calm.
But there was steel underneath it. "We retrieved that footage from the clinic's security system an hour ago." I swallowed slowly. "How long have you known?" "Since this morning." My mind struggled to catch up with the reality unfolding around me. Ryan. The man I had trusted more than anyone. The man I had married. The man who kissed me goodbye this morning. He had been waiting for my death. Waiting for insurance money. Waiting for an inheritance that didn't even belong to him. Charles folded his hands together. "There's something else you should understand, Emily." I looked up at him. His eyes were steady. "Ryan believed you were dying." "Yes." "But he made one mistake." "What mistake?" Charles leaned back slightly. "He didn't realize who would arrive at the clinic today." My voice was barely a whisper. "You?" Charles nodded. "Yes." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "And now," he said quietly, "his plan is about to become a very serious problem." The first week after the video felt like waking up in someone else's life. Doctors moved around me constantly. Blood tests, dialysis, toxicology screenings, endless scans. Charles Whitmore kept his promise. The best specialists in the Whitmore network flew into San Diego within 24 hours. Some of them had written the textbooks used in medical schools. For the first time since I collapsed, I wasn't being treated like a financial risk. I was being treated like someone whose life mattered. Still, recovery was slow. My body had been pushed close to the edge. Some days I could barely sit up in bed. Other days I managed a few steps across the room while nurses hovered nervously beside me. But the physical weakness wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was silence. Ryan never called. Not once. Not to check on me. Not to ask about the hospital. Not even to pretend. According to Charles's investigators, Ryan had told everyone at his company that I had been admitted to a long-term medical facility. A vague explanation. Convenient. Temporary. But not permanent enough to raise suspicion yet. He was waiting for confirmation of my death. One evening, about 3 weeks after my treatment began, Charles entered the room carrying several folders. I was sitting near the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunset bleed orange across the harbor. "You're improving," he said. "I can finally walk to the bathroom without feeling like I'll collapse. That's progress." He placed the folders on the table. I looked at them cautiously. "What are those?" Charles sat down across from me. "Your inheritance." My stomach tightened. Even after weeks of hearing the truth, the words still felt unreal. Arthur Whitmore. My biological grandfather. The man I never met. The man who had unknowingly spent decades searching for me. And 2 months ago,
He died.
leaving behind an empire. Charles opened the first folder. Inside were legal documents, trust agreements, ownership transfers, corporate structures. "Your grandfather anticipated that we might one day find you," Charles explained. "So, he created a protected trust." "For me?" "Yes." "How much?" Charles didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid one page across the table. My eyes scanned the numbers. Hospitals, medical laboratories, pharmaceutical research companies, real estate holdings, investment portfolios. The total value sat quietly at the bottom of the page. I read it twice, then a third time. $6.4 billion? I whispered. Charles nodded. That's the current valuation. My hand slowly lowered the document back onto the table. $6 billion. My entire life until now had been spent budgeting groceries, waiting for payday, worrying about mortgage payments. And suddenly the ground beneath my identity had completely shifted. "I don't even know what to do with something like that," I said. Charles's expression softened slightly. "You don't have to decide immediately." He leaned forward. "But there is one thing you should decide soon." "What?" "How you want to handle Ryan Parker." The name made my chest tighten again. The video replayed in my mind. Ryan laughing in the parking lot. Ryan toasting to my death. Ryan planning his future with Chloe. My fingers slowly closed into fists. "What are my options?" I asked. Charles opened the second folder. Inside were background reports, financial records, corporate filings. "Ryan owns 20% of a mid-sized construction firm," Charles said. "He also has several personal loans tied to upcoming development projects." I flipped through the pages. "He's leveraged. Extremely." Charles studied my face carefully. "Which means he's vulnerable." The realization settled quietly into my mind. Ryan believed I was dying. He believed the inheritance would soon make him rich. He believed he had already won. I looked back toward the window. The harbor lights were beginning to glow as evening settled over San Diego. For the first time in weeks, my thoughts felt clear.
Calm.
Controlled. "I don't want revenge," I said slowly. Charles didn't react. "I want justice." That's a wise distinction. I turned back toward him. "But justice takes patience." A faint smile appeared on his face. "Your grandfather used to say the same thing." I folded the inheritance papers carefully. Ryan thought I was weak.
Sick. Dying.
He thought my story was already ending. But the truth was far more dangerous. Because while he was celebrating my death, I was learning how powerful my new life had just become. And for the first time since the clinic hallway, I began planning what came next. The answer came from a lab report. I didn't understand it at first. 3 days after Charles showed me the inheritance documents, one of the doctors returned with a thin folder and a look I couldn't quite read.
Concern.
Confusion. And something darker. "Emily," he said carefully, "we finally received your full toxicology results." Charles was sitting across the room reviewing financial reports. When he heard the word toxicology, he slowly looked up. "Toxicology?" I asked. The doctor nodded. Your organ failure didn't match a typical medical pattern. What does that mean? He opened the folder and placed a page on the table beside me. My eyes moved across the medical terminology. Heavy metals, blood concentrations, chronic exposure. Then one word stood out. Arsenic. My stomach dropped. That's impossible, I said immediately. The doctor remained calm. The levels in your bloodstream were extremely high. How high? He pointed to the report. These numbers indicate long-term exposure. Charles stood up slowly. How long? He asked. The doctor adjusted his glasses. Based on the tissue analysis, several months. The room became very quiet. Several months. I leaned back in the chair, my mind racing. Arsenic wasn't something you accidentally consume. It isn't in normal food. It doesn't appear in tap water. Someone has to put it there. My voice came out barely above a whisper. So you're saying someone poisoned me? The doctor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned the page. We also tested something else. What? The tea leaves found in your bloodstream. I frowned. What tea?
Chamomile, he said.
The word hit me like a flash of memory. Every night, Ryan made me tea before bed. He said it helped me sleep. A healthy habit, he called it. The doctor continued quietly. The arsenic traces were chemically bonded with organic tea compounds. Charles's eyes darkened. That means... The doctor closed the folder. It was being delivered through the tea. My hands started shaking. Every night for months, Ryan had walked into the kitchen. Boiled water. Prepared a cup. Handed it to me with a gentle smile. Drink this, he would say. You'll sleep better. I had trusted him completely. The nausea rose in my throat. How long until it would have killed me? I asked. The doctor sighed. Probably another week or two. My chest tightened. Ryan hadn't just abandoned me at the clinic. He had designed the entire situation. Slow poisoning. Gradual organ failure. A medical mystery. A natural-looking death. No violence. No obvious crime. Just a wife quietly fading away while her husband waited patiently for the insurance payout. Charles turned toward the window, his jaw tight. This changes things, he said. I looked at him.
How?
Because now it's not just betrayal. He faced me again. It's attempted murder. The word echoed heavily in the room. Attempted murder. Ryan had planned it carefully. Months of poisoning. Insurance adjustments. Waiting for my grandfather to die. And then leaving me untreated in a hospital hallway. A perfect plan. Except for one thing. I survived. The realization settled into my mind slowly. Ryan believed his plan had worked. Right now he probably thought I was dead. Or dying somewhere quietly. And he was waiting for the money. The insurance. Maybe even the Whitmore inheritance. My fingers tightened around the armrest. What happens now? I asked. Charles studied me carefully. That depends on you. On me? Yes. He walked back to the table and closed the toxicology report. We could go to the police today. But that would end the story quickly. I understood immediately. Ryan would be arrested.
Charged.
Imprisoned. Justice, technically served. But something inside me felt unfinished. Because Ryan didn't just want me dead. He wanted to profit from my death. Charles spoke again. Sometimes the law punishes a crime. He paused. Other times, a person destroys themselves. I thought about the parking lot video. Ryan laughing. Ryan celebrating. Ryan believing he had already won. Slowly, a different idea began forming in my mind. A colder one. What if, I said carefully, Ryan believes everything is going according to plan? Charles didn't respond. But I saw the faint shift in his expression. Understanding. What if, I continued, we let him keep believing that? The room became very quiet. Charles studied me for several seconds. Then, he asked one simple question. What exactly do you have in mind, Emily? For the first time, since discovering the truth, I smiled. Something patient. Because Ryan Parker had spent months planning my death. Now it was my turn to plan his fall. 3 months later, Ryan Parker met a woman named Victoria Lane. By then, I was no longer the weak, patient lying in a hospital bed. Recovery had been brutal. Dialysis, medication, physical therapy, weeks of forcing my body to rebuild strength that had been slowly stolen from me. But every painful step had one purpose: preparation. Charles helped with everything: legal protection, financial restructuring, security, and most importantly, information. Ryan Parker was exactly the kind of man who believed he was smarter than everyone else. That confidence made him predictable. Greed made him reckless. And reckless men are very easy to trap. That's how Victoria Lane was born. According to official documents, Victoria Lane was a private investment consultant from Chicago specializing in high-risk urban development projects. Her company, Lane Strategic Capital, had access to enormous private funding. $10 million for the right opportunity. Ryan's construction firm had been struggling quietly for almost a year. Too many loans. Too many unfinished projects. Too many promises made to banks that were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. He needed a miracle. Victoria Lane arrived exactly on time. Their first meeting took place in a glass conference room overlooking downtown San Diego. I watched him through tinted designer sunglasses as he walked in. 3 months. 3 months since he left me to die. Ryan looked good. Relaxed.
Healthy.
He wore the same confident smile I remembered from our early years of marriage. The smile that convinced people he was trustworthy, reliable, successful. When he saw me standing near the window, he extended his hand. "Ms. Lane," he said warmly. "It's a pleasure." His hand felt exactly the same. The same grip, the same warmth, the same man who had slowly poisoned me. "Mr. Parker," I replied calmly.
My voice was different now.
Lower, colder, controlled. Charles had hired one of the best transformation specialists in Los Angeles. Hair darker, subtle facial contouring, different makeup style, new posture. Even my voice carried a slightly altered tone. Ryan had absolutely no idea he had ever met Victoria Lane before. We sat down. Ryan opened a presentation on the screen. "This project," he explained confidently, "will transform the entire waterfront district. Luxury apartments, commercial space, retail development." It was ambitious, expensive, and extremely risky. Exactly the kind of project a desperate businessman would gamble everything on. When he finished, I remained silent for several seconds, letting the tension grow. Ryan leaned forward slightly. "What do you think?" I folded my hands on the table. "I think you're over-leveraged." His smile tightened. "That's a strong word." "It's an accurate one." I slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were detailed reports of his company's debts, his personal loans, the delayed payments to subcontractors. Ryan's eyes flickered with surprise. "You did your homework." "I always do." Silence stretched between us. Then I leaned back slightly. "But I also see potential." That was the moment his attention sharpened completely. "How much investment are we talking about?" he asked. I opened another document. $10 million. Ryan didn't hide the excitement that flashed across his face. "With one condition." "What condition?" I met his eyes. "If the project fails," I tapped the contract, "your company becomes the collateral." His confidence returned instantly. He didn't even hesitate. "This project won't fail." Greed is a fascinating thing. It convinces people they're invincible. Ryan didn't see danger. He saw opportunity. He saw a future where his failing companies suddenly exploded into success. He saw the $10 million. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he was still waiting for the insurance money from my death. He signed the contract in less than 10 minutes. His signature moved across the paper smoothly, confidently, carelessly. The moment the pen left the page, Ryan Parker unknowingly handed me the weapon that would destroy him. He stood and shook my hand again. "Ms. Lane," he said with a satisfied grin, "I think this will be the start of a very profitable partnership." I returned the smile politely. "Oh," I said calmly, "it will definitely be profitable. Just not for him." Because the moment Ryan left the building, Charles's legal team activated the next step of the plan. The project funding would begin immediately. Construction would start. Ryan would invest everything he had. Every loan, every asset, every dollar of borrowed confidence. And at the exact right moment, the entire project would freeze. Ryan Parker had spent months planning the perfect death for his wife. Now he had just signed the perfect contract for his own destruction. And he had absolutely no idea who Victoria Lane really was. For the first month, everything went exactly the way Ryan expected. Construction began immediately. Concrete trucks arrived at the waterfront site every morning before sunrise. Steel frameworks climbed slowly toward the sky. Ryan's company logo hung proudly across the fences surrounding the project. From a distance, it looked like success. But success built on desperation has very fragile foundations. Ryan had poured everything into the development, every available loan, every company asset, even personal guarantees tied to his own house and retirement accounts. He believed he was standing on the edge of a massive breakthrough. What he didn't know was that every step forward had been carefully measured. Every contract, every supplier, every approval. Charles Whitmore's legal team quietly controlled the entire financial structure behind the project. And then, exactly 6 weeks after construction began, the first delay appeared. A regulatory inspection, temporary permit review, environmental reassessment. Nothing dramatic, just paperwork. Ryan wasn't worried. At first, construction paused for 2 days, then 5,
Then 10.
Workers waited around the empty site while lawyers and inspectors exchanged emails filled with technical language. Ryan called Victoria Lane. I answered on the third ring. There seems to be a problem, he said. His voice still sounded calm, controlled. What kind of problem? I asked coolly. The city suspended the permits. That happens. For 10 days. Regulatory reviews can be unpredictable. Ryan exhaled slowly. But the delays are costing money. Development always costs money. He didn't like that answer. I could hear it in the silence. Still, he said nothing.
Because he needed me.
2 days later, the messages began. At first they were small, anonymous emails, sent from untraceable accounts. The first one arrived late at night. Are you sure your wife is dead? Ryan ignored it. Probably assumed it was spam. But the next message came the following evening. Hospitals make mistakes sometimes. Then another. Some patients survive. 3 days later, Ryan called again. This time his voice was tighter. Victoria, have you heard anything unusual about my wife? I kept my tone neutral. I thought she passed away. That's what I was told. Told by who? He hesitated. The clinic. Then why are you asking me? Silence. I've been receiving strange messages. What kind of messages? They keep suggesting Emily might still be alive. I let a quiet pause stretch between us. Then I said calmly, that sounds like paranoia. Ryan laughed nervously.
Yeah.
Probably. But the emails continued. Did you ever wonder what the toxicology report said? Ryan stopped sleeping well. According to Charles's investigators, he began checking hospital records, calling the clinic, even driving past the building twice. But no one gave him answers. Officially, Emily Parker had been transferred to another medical facility. Privately, Ryan's mind began unraveling. Meanwhile, the project delays grew worse. The environmental review extended another 3 weeks. Bank payments came due. Contractors demanded money. Ryan called me almost every day now. We need to push the city harder, he insisted during one call. Government agencies don't move faster under pressure. I replied calmly. But I'm losing millions sitting here. That's the risk of development. Another pause. Victoria, he said carefully, you're still committed to the investment, right? Of course. My answer sounded perfectly reassuring. But behind the scenes, every legal clause inside Ryan's contract was slowly tightening around him. Then the final message arrived. It came 3 days before the Chicago Charity Gala. A simple photograph. No text. Just an image. The photo showed a hospital hallway. And, in the reflection of a glass window, a woman standing beside a bed. Ryan stared at the image for a long time. The woman's face wasn't completely visible, but the shape of her profile looked painfully familiar. Too familiar. His breathing grew heavier, because suddenly the impossible idea began forming in his mind. Emily might still be alive. And if Emily was alive, everything he had done, the poisoning, the hospital, the insurance, the lies, would destroy him. That same evening, Ryan searched for Victoria Lane online. He discovered something interesting. Victoria Lane would be attending a charity gala in Chicago. A public event. Hundreds of wealthy guests. A stage presentation. Ryan booked a flight that night. According to security reports, he purchased something before leaving San Diego. A small folding knife. By the time he boarded the plane, Ryan Parker had convinced himself of one thing. Victoria Lane had ruined his life. She had trapped him in a failing project. She might even know the truth about Emily. And the only way to protect himself was to silence her. Forever. But Ryan Parker was about to walk into the worst mistake of his entire life. Because the Chicago Gala wasn't just a charity event. It was the final stage of a very carefully prepared reveal. The ballroom in Chicago looked like something from another world. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls of light. Hundreds of guests filled the room, dressed in tuxedos and evening gowns, their voices blending into a soft murmur of wealth and influence. The annual Whitmore Medical Foundation Gala. For decades, it had been one of the most prestigious charity events in the country. Tonight, every seat was filled.
Doctors. Investors.
Politicians.
Media.
At the center of the stage stood a single podium with a Whitmore crest glowing behind it. And beside that podium stood Victoria Lane. Or at least, that's who the audience believed they were looking at. A sleek black dress. Dark hair. Subtle makeup. Confident posture. No one in the room recognized Emily Parker. Backstage, Charles Whitmore stood calmly beside the security team. "Everything is ready," one of the guards said quietly. Charles nodded. "And Ryan?" "He arrived 20 minutes ago." Charles glanced toward the ballroom entrance. Ryan Parker stood near the back of the room, scanning the crowd. His face looked different now. Thinner. Tighter. Weeks of financial pressure and sleepless nights had carved anxiety into his expression. But beneath the panic there was something darker. Desperation. In the inside pocket of his jacket sat the folding knife he bought in San Diego. Ryan believed Victoria Lane had destroyed his future. He believed she knew something about Emily. And tonight, he intended to end the problem. The announcer stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "please welcome a new member of the Whitmore Foundation leadership team." Polite applause filled the ballroom. "Ms. Victoria Lane." I stepped forward. The lights from the stage warmed my face as I reached the podium. Hundreds of eyes watched. Ryan's eyes were among them. For a moment he simply stared, trying to understand why something about this woman seemed strangely familiar. I began speaking. "My name is Victoria Lane." My voice carried clearly through the room. "Tonight I've been asked to speak about investment, responsibility, and the future of the Whitmore Medical Group." Ryan slowly began moving through the crowd. Quietly, carefully. His hand slipped into his jacket pocket. I continued speaking. "But before we talk about the future, I'd like to tell a story." The room quieted. A few months ago, a woman collapsed in a small clinic in San Diego. Ryan stopped walking. His eyes locked onto me. The hospital tried to charge her $200,000 for treatment. Whispers moved through the audience. When her credit card was declined, the staff pushed her into a hallway. Ryan's breathing grew heavier. But the worst part wasn't the hospital. I looked directly at him now. The worst part was her husband. Security guards quietly moved toward the sides of the room. Ryan began pushing forward faster. I continued calmly. The husband promised to find money. But instead, he walked out of the clinic with his girlfriend and celebrated his wife's death. Gasps rippled across the ballroom. Ryan reached the edge of the stage. His hand pulled the knife from his pocket. "You ruined my life," he shouted. The room erupted in panic. Ryan lunged forward toward the stage. but two security guards grabbed him instantly. The knife clattered across the floor. Guests shouted. Cameras flashed. Ryan struggled wildly against the guards. "She's lying," he screamed. "You don't know what she did." I stepped away from the podium slowly. Then I reached up and removed the dark wig. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. My real hair fell across my shoulders. Ryan froze. His face drained of color. "No," he whispered. I removed the glasses next. And finally the subtle makeup contour that had changed the shape of my face. "Hello, Ryan," I said quietly. The room fell into stunned silence. "You look surprised." Ryan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "That's impossible," he muttered. "You were dying." I nodded slowly. "Yes. Because you poisoned me." The words echoed across the ballroom. Two police officers stepped onto the stage. One of them held a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a small container of white powder. "Ryan Parker," the officer said loudly, "you are under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud." Ryan's legs nearly collapsed beneath him. "That's not." Another officer held up a folder. "Toxicology reports confirm long-term arsenic poisoning." Then another officer stepped forward. "And we also have the clinic surveillance footage." The screen behind the stage suddenly lit up. The video played. Ryan in the parking lot. Ryan laughing. Ryan toasting to my death. The crowd watched in horrified silence. Ryan stopped struggling. His shoulders sagged as the reality finally crushed him. This can't be happening," he whispered. I stepped closer to him. For a moment, we stood face to face. The man who once promised to love me for the rest of his life. The man who tried to quietly erase me. "You spent months planning my death," I said calmly. Ryan's eyes were wide with terror. "You destroyed yourself," I continued softly. The police pulled him toward the exit. As they dragged him away, he looked back at me one last time. But I was no longer Emily Parker. I turned back toward the audience. Charles Whitmore stepped onto the stage beside me. He placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "allow me to introduce the rightful heir to the Whitmore Medical Group." The crowd stared, still stunned, still silent. Charles's voice carried clearly through the ballroom. "Emily Whitmore." For a moment I looked out across the room. At the empire my grandfather had built. At the life I had nearly lost. And at the future that now belonged to me. Then I spoke one final sentence.
Calm.
Cold. Certain. I didn't destroy him. I paused. He destroyed himself.